Indian news ma kwaba assign the ba wan kasa fidie so bio. Na maka trust before anything else na just a share na ebiem so kwa na wo subscribe to your channel no. What's the political news there? Never governance. We catch you sa pan input of ma yete. Na pan input of ma yete dia. Ane na nsem foforo bi enso asan esi. Benim say what the nsem ade ban nyina na ya na ya wote na ya wohwe na ya wofen so. Nti no nsem foforo bi esi a India news yan so pan ye to for me baby ati nyina chi no yensa atumi aka bi na yaso enso atimi atisa nsem bi. Yentie nsem member sisi a na mpanifo mpo se kakom no ye che no koku enum de ba. Before that no subscribe to your channel no. Sabeka all other news a fa politics one the opesa wotie no eho etie ba ebe ba bia susu anso person de body no fa na de asie bia no so fa comment enso to ase ne yenkenkan informaw de ready na emeko yentie nsem mercy a wotie no fa comment to ase ba de emfa nchemu no so ento aso yentie mra.
Has been Council of State suspended the Chief Justice. It's never happened before. This is the first time we're seeing this happen under the Fourth Republic, where a sitting Chief Justice has been suspended by the President on the advice of the Council of State. And so, as you can imagine, it has been a major news day as far as this is concerned. There's a lot still to unpack. You're at the right place. This is PMX, so that's exactly what we're going to do for you. The first thing the President did once the decision was taken and announced that the Chief Justice has been suspended was to form a 5-member committee. The task is simple. They will now investigate and give a hearing to the Chief Justice to come before them and answer to the 3 petitions that have now been put before them asking for her removal. They will interrogate the basis and the grounds. She will now have an opportunity, either by herself or with an expert or a lawyer of her choice, to put in the defense. Now, the 5 members of this committee, 2 of them are her own colleagues on the bench at the Supreme Court. And of course, they were her subordinates on the bench. She administratively will empanel and appoint some of them today going forward. 2 of them, one, of course, the chairman, in this case, Justice Gabriel Scott-Palmer. You know him, the former General Secretary of the PNC. He himself had a lot of controversy around his appointment, but he is the chair appointed by the President to oversee the investigations into the 3 petitions before them. He is going to chair that committee. He's also called Supreme Court Justice and appointed by John Dramani Mahama. And I remember when his appointment was first put forth, it was very controversial because of his political background. Well, he became a Supreme Court judge and has since been there, and he will chair this. He is going to be supported by another justice of the Supreme Court, in this case, Adibu Asiedu, Justice Samuel Kwame Adibu Asiedu, who will support him in evaluating the evidence thoroughly before them. And as you know, and see on the smart wall there, he was appointed by former President John Agyekum Kufuor, and of course he's been there since that time, and of course has been very instrumental in some of the very important cases. He was appointed then way back to the High Court and climbed all the way to the Appeals Court, to the Supreme Court, and is going to be the 2nd justice. Now, you know, this other member of the committee, the Supreme Court is obviously now a subject of a lot of controversy because the head of the judiciary itself has been suspended. It's never happened before, at least in the Fourth Republic. And so you can imagine those 2 justices will have a lot to say, but there's a lot that their own reputations will now have to sort of sift through, and will have to weigh the outcome and the evidence. Will have to wait because they are the judges. They know how to evaluate the evidence. But this man here, Daniel Yardemolovo, you know him. He is the former Auditor General. He himself was subject to a very controversial removal by the previous president, Nana Addo Akufo-Addo. And guess what? At the time when the president asked him to proceed on leave, when civil society fought it, they went to the Supreme Court. When they went to the Supreme Court, they filed to challenge it. And I remember then the Supreme Court, according to the civil society groups that went there, including CDD, accused the Supreme Court of delaying in empaneling judges to hear that particular matter. Eventually, when they impaneled and the case was called, it was a moot point because he had already been removed from office and it was inconsequential. But of course, the decision came in at the time, it was too late, right? Interestingly, he is now going to sit in judgment of the Chief Justice. Bottom line, that's what it's going to be. He will be weighing, together with the four others, whether or not there is enough basis in the three petitions to remove the Chief Justice. How fascinating that will be. And Daniel Demalebo comes to this with impeccable track record indeed, doing a fantastic job as a member of the Oral Preparatory Committee, again put together by John Dramani Mahama. But his work really is shot to national fame when he was the Auditor General. And you know, he really set the pace when it comes to surcharges. Civil society accepted him. He really was one no-nonsense Auditor General, embraced by all. Even the former government embraced him at the beginning. They praised him for the work that he's done, exposing $5 billion worth of corruption that was tied to the previous administration. Just when he began to now do his work, as many will now point to, that also begin to touch some very important appointees of the previous administration, he came under a lot of criticism. Eventually, he had to bow out because the president said, well, you'd reached your retirement age and you needed to go. And so he went. Now, he is a member of this committee. It's going to be fascinating indeed. Also considering his own background recently with the oral committee that was set up, a manifesto promise implemented with him as a member of this particular committee. Will the minority side raise questions about his membership of this particular committee? We'll see how this pans out. And then we know very little of this associate professor, but he's also a member of this particular committee. Professor James Efajisa has been appointed also on this committee. He is a Department of Sociology, University of Ghana, and he is also going to be part of the three non-lawyers who are also not members of the Council of State, who will be helping the two Supreme Court judges evaluate the evidence before them. And then there's a final individual we know very little of indeed, but we know that he is a member of the Ghana Armed Forces, a very senior member at that. Major Flora Dalugo will also be part of this evaluation. It's been 28 days since, as we know, the Council of State petition went there to evaluate it, and they've been considering this, and the decision was made today that a prima facie case has been made, and so the Chief Justice should be suspended whilst the process goes ahead. And it's traveled a fair bit. He first went to the petition submitted phase. This is all according to the Constitution, by the way. And then also Council of State now determined the prima facie, which has happened today. The President, obviously, once this happens, has a...
After this fufu and pepper soup,
he can set up this committee, which is done, and that, by the way, is a must. But what the Constitution gives him a discretion to do, which means he can choose not to, is to suspend the Chief Justice. He's chosen to exercise that discretion in favor of a suspension, right? That in itself is a contested matter. We'll get my colleagues, my panelists to weigh in on that when we sit for a conversation. And then 5, the committee now will submit a recommendation to him. And once they submit, he's obliged to follow the recommendations as submitted by the committee. And then at the time, if they say she will be removed at the time, indeed. The minority have issued a strongly worded statement 3 hours ago in which they accuse the president of, in fact, supervising a coup, a brazen political coup, judicial coup, overthrowing the Chief Justice. They say it is a political vendetta against the judiciary, and that the NDC wants to pack the courts with their own people. And they were very clear that they will resist this with everything they have. In fact, they've suggested tonight that there will be protests, public protests, if the president doesn't do 2 things. 1, if he doesn't reinstate the Chief Justice, and if he does not suspend the process currently ongoing to remove her. Okay, we'll sit for a conversation pretty shortly on this particular matter because, as you know, it is a very controversial one today. We haven't seen this before, so you can imagine. But we know now that already an acting Chief Justice is in play and working already, because the process is very, very clear. Once the Chief Justice is in there, the next most senior justice of the Supreme Court steps in and acts. That's what's going to happen. And we know the identity of this individual. He is Justice Paul Bafoboni. He is now acting Chief Justice, and you know he was himself appointed by the Kufuor administration in 2008, appointed by, at the time, of course, when he was appointed, he had done a lot of work in that particular area, and he has some great works to his name. He, as you know, was very instrumental in the John Dramani Mahama winning that very controversial 2012 presidential petition that went to the Supreme Court. He had, many say, the deciding vote, because it was 5-4. He was among the 5 justices of the Supreme Court who said John Mahama genuinely won the 2012 elections. And without him, really, John Dramani Mahama wouldn't have been the president at the time. And that's just a fact to look at. Also, another fact is that his wife was recently appointed as head of the prison service. And then we also know that he had a brother, a very famous brother, who was the head of the Radio Good at some point. But he comes to this with great judicial pedigree in terms of the work that he's done there. He is acting Chief Justice. It's not automatic by any sort of imagination that when this process is done, he becomes a substantive matter. Yes, now, by virtue of the protocols and the constitutional dictates, he is the next most senior, but in the appointment of a substantive CJ, senior most, isn't necessarily the only consideration that the appointing authority will consider. And so that we'll talk about too. Sit down for a conversation right after this. The sitting Chief Justice, and I've just been joined by my panelists to weigh in on the unfolding controversy. PMS is always brought to you by Syntax Tanks. It is strong, it is tough. Academic Times, the Public Speaker Series, and Pepsodent Cavity Fighter Toothpaste. Joining me for a conversation tonight is a man you know, joins us here for a conversation all the time. Justice Remsai is the Deputy Attorney General and Minister for Justice, will join us pretty shortly for a conversation on this. Sam Okudzeto is a former member of the Council of State, the former president of the Ghana Bar Association. We expect him to also join us. Frank Davis, the chairman of the Constitutional and Legal Committee of the New Patriotic Party, joins us via Zoom. Professor Kojo P.J. Tia is Associate Professor of Law of the University of Ghana, also joins us for a conversation tonight. And we will also have the opportunity to delve deeper into the thoughts of the of some of the key individuals who have been following this throughout the day, understanding some of the implications of this, basically, for the judiciary. Remsai will join us pretty shortly with his thoughts on this. But I want to start right now with Frank Davis. And Frank, grateful that you could join us. The minority side issued a strongly worded statement shortly after it was confirmed that the Chief Justice had been suspended, in which they called the decision to suspend her brazen judicial coup and a reckless abuse of executive power. Do you ascribe to this description, this labeling of the decision of the president?
Thank you once, and grateful once again, and good evening to your esteemed listeners and viewers. Permit me to share my own thoughts.
Okay. You disagree or you align with that?
I don't have to disagree. I don't have to align. Evans, just permits me to share my own thoughts on the matter.
What are your thoughts on this?
Yes. Well, as a trained lawyer, Evans, I rather would have wished that we are not where we are now. Because this...
What's up, guys? I'm Lamide here in Lagos.
Is the first in our democratic dispensation that the Chief Justice has had to be suspended on petitions which have been filed against her, ostensibly for her removal. I see it more as an assault on the judiciary, so to speak.
How so? I mean, this is due process.
Well, can I? I'm not saying it's not due process. Of course, Article 146 is a constitutional structure, so nobody can say that what is happening is not regulated by the Constitution. It's actually a baby of the Constitution, that if petitions are sent for the removal of the Chief Justice, the processes which are going through, with the processes which have been going through thus far, are what is procedurally and lawfully permitted by the dictates of the Constitution. But the reason why I say it's an assault on the judiciary is that we should look at the commentary that has gone on thus far, so far as these petitions are concerned, and the kind of statements which have been made by very senior political actors. And it gives a veiled impression that maybe this Chief Justice is not liked, so there should be an attempt to have her removed. And I'm saying this
Statements such as?
I have heard an interview that was ascribed to the Deputy General Secretary of the ruling NDC government. He has not come out to disassociate himself with that statement. He has not asked for a retraction of the statement. So I take it that it is a statement that he made. And he was categorical that the Chief Justice will be removed. When statements like this are made, it actually takes the whole exercise out of due process.
I mean, how so? Because that individual is not the president. He has no constitutional role in the process.
Yeah, he doesn't have to be the president. He is the Deputy General Secretary of the ruling government. Evans, you are also a political actor, even though you're a journalist. You should definitely understand what I'm saying.
What are you saying?
If the Deputy General Secretary, excuse me, if the Deputy General Secretary of the ruling government makes such a statement, of course, he's not the president. I haven't said he's the president, but it has far-reaching implications.
Such as?
He's not the only one. Excuse me?
I mean, you say it has far-reaching implications.
Yeah, it means that he, as a senior officer of the ruling government, subscribes to the fact that the Chief Justice should be or will be removed when even the processes have not unfolded. These categorical statements are unnecessary. I mean, they are needless. You see, they color the whole atmosphere, and if you are even supposed to err on the side of the Constitution and on the side of due process, you are challenged. Now, he's not the only person who has said so. I've also heard the national chairman of the NDC also make a public statement that, yes, it is due process, but the judiciary, there should be a reset of the judiciary and all that. What is that supposed to mean? Well, what is the meaning of there should be a reset of the judiciary? So the reset of the judiciary is what we are saying, that the Chief Justice should be removed so that there will be a reset of the judiciary. Now, you see, when there's a lawful exercise being undertaken by the president, who obviously has little option in the matters, when a petition is forwarded to the president, he cannot say that he won't look at it or he won't forward it to the Council of State. He is bound by the Constitution so to do. So yes, he is undertaking his constitutional duty and lawful exercise of a sitting president. But when members of his political party, which is in government, go out to make such statements, it becomes a big challenge.
Okay, but fundamentally, you don't disagree that this is due process.
But how can I disagree with it?
Yes. So I mean, so of what consequence?
I mean, as a student of law, how can I disagree with it?
Of what consequence are the other tangential comments by Deputy General Secretary and the Chairman, etc., when the process itself is being followed according to the letter? Isn't that what we should be looking at?
We live in a society. We don't live in outer space. We live in a society, and it is the societal norms which governs all of us. Apart from matters as in it's a constitutional or a due process. So, if political actors who are supposed to know better and who ascribe to the philosophy of the ruling government say those things, they tie the hands of the president. It's something you should understand.
Hold on for me, because the Deputy Attorney General is with me. I want to put that to him.
Excuse me. Can I
I'll return to you. Because they have a lot of people on the line. Just stay with me. I'll come to you. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
That's the same side. The point he's making is one that many have made also. Yes, there is a constitutional process. He doesn't dispute that. But you can also weaponize a constitutional provision, and some accuse you of doing exactly that you're bending the Constitution to your political will. How do you respond to that?
Thank you very much, Evans, and good evening to you and your esteemed listeners and viewers. I think the point is clear that the Constitution